We went on a camping trip in Appalachia. Never again. By ZacharyBake. Frankly, I'm on the fence when it comes to the supernatural. I'm not completely sold, but I'm not going to rule it out completely. However, recently, I've decided to reconsider that belief. This story happened a month or so ago in July. Me and my friends had planned out this exciting camping trip to Appalachia. We had an Airbnb and everything prepared. Okay, don't judge me, I didn't want to sleep in a tent. Anyways, it would be a nice change of pace from Iowa. I'd take trees over cornfields any day. The only caveat was the 12-hour drive. Now, before I continue the story, I'll introduce my friends so none of you are confused. I've got 3 other friends. There's Emma, Matt, and Parker. We had brought along Emma's little brother, who I'll call C since he's a minor. Emma's parents were arrested for things that aren't really important for this story, but now C's under Emma's legal guardianship and she couldn't find a babysitter for him. None of us really cared. In fact, we thought C was cool. Anyways, we arrived at the Airbnb and unpacked. There were 3 rooms, so I got a room alone. Matt and Parker got a room together, and Emma and C got a room together. I got lucky. Now, it was around 6 p.m.-ish, probably, so we decided to set up a campfire and start roasting marshmallows. We ended up forgetting the marshmallows. No matter, me and Matt decided to go drive to the nearest town and pick up some from the store. C wasn't happy, but we assured him that we'll be back in 10 minutes. While driving to the store, me and Matt talked about Appalachia. Maybe we'll see a skinwalker, said Matt. Dude, shut up. Aren't those things located in Navajo territories? There's no way we'd encounter one here in Appalachia, I said. And I knew I was right. We arrived at the local convenience store and argued over what kind of marshmallows we should get. I suggested regular marshmallows. Matt suggested pink marshmallows. We eventually came to a decision and I bought a Hershey's bar as well, since I figured we'd need extra, considering how much of a fat ass Parker is when it comes to candy. After paying, we drove back to the Airbnb. C told me that he saw a deer and was very proud of getting close to it. Emma affirmed this. Apparently, this deer's eyes were on the front of its head, and it didn't appear hostile, so she let C get close enough to it to not disturb it in any way. In addition to roasting marshmallows, we'd be making burgers and hot dogs. We lit the fireplace and began cooking the meats. That is when a hiker walked up to our campfire. He had a duffel bag, introduced himself as Josh. He asked if he could use our campfire. We were weirded out, but agreed. Josh opened his duffel bag, revealing a bunch of different kinds of meat. There was chicken, beef, venison, and what looked like pork. Emma questioned this, and Josh states that he thinks it's pork. He found it in a cooler tucked underneath a blind. According to Josh, there was no one around, so he took it. Emma immediately stated that she wanted the pork. She absolutely loves bacon. Josh shrugged and agreed, but warned Emma that he didn't know how long the pork was left out there. Emma ignored his warning and insisted on having it. Parker spoke with Josh while me, Emma, and Matt were trying not to horribly burn the meats. Once finished, I had some burgers. Matt and Parker ate some hot dogs and some of Josh's game, while Emma ate the pork. Emma started to feel sick. Damn, so the pork was left out for a while. Josh just threw out the rest of the pork and Emma went to go puke. We finished eating dinner and began roasting marshmallows. We had way too many marshmallows, so we couldn't actually finish them all. But as expected, Parker's fat ass finished the Hershey's bar. I went in to check on Emma. She had finished puking and she looked a little pale. Not a sickly pale, just drained. I told her to take some Pepto and get some sleep. I didn't want to hold to make her feel bad or think that she somehow ruined this trip. I went back outside to wave a goodbye to Josh, who warned about black bears. Then me, Parker, Matt, and C hung out for an hour before it started to sprinkle, and then rain. We went inside and decided to just go to sleep. Emma didn't want to sleep in the same room as C since she was sick with God knows what, and didn't want it to spread to C. Matt figured it was just food poisoning, but still, had C crash in my room instead. I didn't protest, but I made it clear that I wasn't happy. So much for sleeping alone. Anyways, we got ready for bed and fell asleep. Well, C did. I did not. I heard loud rustling outside. Didn't think too much about it. But what was strange was how quiet everything else was. I got up and opened up my window a crack to let air in and didn't hear anything. No cicadas, no insects, nothing. Just the wind howling through the trees and the rain. I shut the window and went back to bed. I laid in bed for a few minutes before I heard something get thrown at the window. I turned my head to look at the window. Nothing but darkness. Something about it didn't sit right with me. I got up and walked to the living room. I had to make sure I locked all the doors. The floor creaked under every step I made. Checked the front door, locked. I checked the back door, locked as well. But then I heard Emma's voice. She was on the other end of the glass door. "Let me in," said Emma. I looked through the glass door and didn't see anyone, but then again, I couldn't see anything much at all. "Emma, what are you doing out there?" I asked. It took her a second to respond, but she eventually did. A simple, "It's cold." This struck me as odd, so I went to Emma's room and found her sleeping on her bed, facing away from the door. I froze. If Emma was here, then who was outside? I slowly closed the door, but stopped. I noticed she was in the fetal position while sleeping and mumbling. The fetal position wasn't the strange part. She did puke a few hours earlier, but the mumbling. Emma doesn't talk in her sleep. I know that for a fact, and what she was mumbling was weird. She was mumbling in a language I did not recognize. I grabbed the desk lamp just in case. I pushed the door open and walked in. I held the lamp like a weapon. I looked as she turned over to face me, and then she opened her eyes. We both screamed, and I dropped the lamp. To her, it looked like I was going to hit her over the head, and her scream had startled me. Parker and Matt walked into the room. They looked annoyed. "The hell happened?" asked Matt. I explained that I heard Emma's voice outside. I looked at Emma. She looked fine, too fine. She didn't look like she threw up only hours prior. I looked at her pillow. A little bit of her hair was on the pillow, like it fell out. We walked out to the living room and Parker opened the back door and stepped outside, only to get soaked by the rain. However, a cold, eerily cold breeze crept into the Airbnb. I stepped out with Parker and turned on my phone to use it as a flashlight. We saw footprints. Human footprints. Me and Parker went, "Oh, hell no," and went inside, locked the door, and we barricaded the shit out of it. Emma asked if it was Josh. Matt shot down the idea. Josh was far too nice, not the stalk innocent campers type. Suddenly, we heard a knock on the back door. "Hey, open up," said a voice that sounded exactly like Josh. Emma snapped, "Go to hell!" It was out of character for her. It almost seemed territorial. The thing outside stopped. It began circling the Airbnb, tapping on the walls, before seeming to leave. We all decided to just go back to sleep. Day 2. The events of the previous night were still imprinted into our brains. We made breakfast, which Emma swallowed up like it was her last meal. We agreed to cut the trip short. After breakfast, we packed up and went outside, only to find my van's tires slashed. Shit. Our phones didn't have service due to the storm the previous night, and the closest town was a mile or so away. If we wanted to get new tires, we'd have to push the car through the forest for a mile. But we didn't have a choice. We put C in the car, along with Emma, and me, Parker, and Matt began to push. However, we stopped. Yeah, it'd be hard. Even harder downhill. The road winds and twists, so it'll roll downhill and right into a tree if we push it. We were trapped. We accepted defeat and just went back inside the Airbnb. I silently prayed that we wouldn't have to stay a second night in this godforsaken place. Emma kept getting hungry and ate through a majority of our snacks. Everyone was getting weirded out by her behavior. I went outside to look at the tracks from the previous night. Human, yes, absolutely. I followed them. I wasn't stupid, so I didn't follow them into the tree lines. I saw how they seemed to shift into that of a bear. I stepped back and ran back to the Airbnb. Before entering, I saw a truck pass and waved them down. It was Josh. He thanked me for letting him cook dinner for himself at the fire pit. Josh then looked at my van and saw the slashed tires. "Damn," he said. "What happened?" I don't know," I told him. I then asked if he was outside the Airbnb last night. Josh looked at me and said that his home is decently far from here. He was not here. Josh, however, said something that almost made me jump. He could attach my van to his truck and drive us to the town. I agreed and thanked him. I ran inside to get the others. We watched from the porch as Josh knelt by the hitch. Eventually, he let us get in and began driving us to the town. I was in the passenger seat of his truck while the others were crammed in the van. I looked at the tree line. I could swear I could see a shadow dash between the trees. Josh broke the silence and asked where I was from. I told him, and he laughed, a nervous laugh. Josh glanced toward the trees and asked if I had seen that too. I froze. He had seen it too. That thing between the trees? I could see Josh started to panic slightly. He pressed harder on the gas. Whatever was out there, it was chasing us. It didn't want us to leave. Josh honked the horn in a clear attempt to scare it away, but it didn't. We noticed the most putrid odor that I have ever smelled. It was so pungent that even with the windows closed, we could still smell it. I followed us all the way until we made it to the town. Josh drove us to the car shop and unattached my van. We paid for new tires and put them on. Finally, we could leave. We thanked Josh one final time and then began driving all the way back to Iowa. I prayed it didn't follow us home. It didn't seem to follow us, and we drove back without issue, except for Emma. She was off. A little more violent. It even started freaking out to see. She insisted on beef jerky instead of her typical spicy chips. She barely spoke after that. Never replied to texts, never picked up our calls, and barely attended our college classes. None of it, in fact. Last I saw of her was recently when she picked up C from his first day of school. She seemed off, thinner, hollow even. Eyes were sunken in. I walked up to her and tried talking with her. She said nothing and just got into her car. I spoke to C. He told me that he didn't feel safe with her anymore. I'm concerned for Emma and C. I don't know what happened to her. If anyone out there has any ideas of what I could do, please tell me, because I don't know what to do now.